Hey there! Thank you for tuning in to Chats with Hannah. Today we're going to be chatting with Bisma the father. She's a speech and language therapist. She works mainly with children, and I'm so happy to have you, Bisma, chatting with me today.
Hello, Hannah. It's nice to be here on this platform with you.
So, actually, interestingly, Bisma and I, we worked together briefly for a while, and that's how we got to know each other. Bisma also has an Instagram page where she shares a lot of information about just different speech and language areas and issues with kids and how to sort of, how to tackle it as parents. And it's called The Speaking Mummy. Is that right?
Yes, right.
All right. So let's dive in today. Today, our topic is speech and language in young kids. So my first question is, when we think about kids, right, like developmentally, we see like a lot of like early talkers and we see late talkers, and we know that there is this huge spectrum, right, that kids fall into. But what would you say that a kid by the time they're 3 years of age, like what kind of speech and language development that they should have by then?
By the time a child is 3 years of age, he should be able to talk in sentences. Okay. Minimum would be talking in simple sentences. Okay. At least the child should be at the sentence level. The second important thing is the child should be able to communicate for more than just his basic needs. Like, initially we see that the children are communicating only to request either food or toys from you. But this communicative repertoire has to increase, like where children communicate to show you something, to tell you about a past experience, okay, to negotiate on something, to say something that they don't want or why they don't like it. So that's how their communicative repertoire needs to increase. Third thing is a child should be able to understand simple who, what, where kind of questions, and he or she should be able to answer those kind of questions. So, a two-way communication, interaction between the child and the caregiver is what needs to be developed. It's not that only the caregiver is asking and the child is responding. It has to be a two-way interaction. Third thing is that the child should be able to use the language that he knows to build or initiate social interactions, which may be with friends or peers or maybe the teachers, the preschool teachers. That's how the children, start interacting with others in the environment. And fifth point, this would be that the children's vocabulary should include a variety of words, right from nouns, verbs, adjectives, prepositions. So they should know different types of words. They should just not label things by their name, like car, ball, bat. No, they should be able to say it's a red car, it's a big bat, I want to play with a big ball. So these are the things that should come in their repertoire.
All right. So when you're saying sentences, right? Like what kind of sentences are we talking about? Does it have to be too complex? Like you said, they have to mention like it's a red car, right? So there are like
Yeah.
sort of an adjective with the noun.
Yeah.
But like, so how simple a sentence will be normal, and yeah.
Simple to compound sentences should be there by 3 years of age. Simple sentence would be like, Mama, I want to eat food. Okay. And if you see a complex sentence, it would be, when we go out, you buy me a chocolate. Okay. So these are the kind of sentences we would expect normally by 3 years of age in children.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. So, what are 5 ways in which parents can encourage this development in their child?
Okay, so 5 ways in which parent can encourage. The most basic one would be talking to the child. As lame as it sounds, it is the most important one. Now, most often parents get confused. They are like, what should we talk about to a child? A child is too young to understand things. What are we going to talk about with them? So I tell parents that you need to make sure that you use your 5 senses. Whatever you see, hear, smell, taste, feel, you can talk about those things. So, these are the things which can be incorporated very nicely in your daily routine. You're going to the park, talk about what you see at the park, what you do at the park, what you feel at the park. Okay, there are so many things, so much stimulation is there in the environment. So that is what they need to use, and talk to the child. And talking to the child starts right from the time the child is in the womb, right? So that's how a child starts to recognize the voice of a mother even when he is in utero. The second important thing would be reading to your child. I think how much ever I stress the importance of reading, it's going to be less. Read as much as you can, read as early as you can. Make sure that you form reading as a habit in your children. Because as we see further, we'll be discussing, I think, reading in detail. So you'll come to know about that. Third thing is singing to the child. Now, if you see, most of the time children are exposed to nursery rhymes and, even familiar folk songs or normal songs that we have in our dialect or in our language. So it really helps children catch those words when they are there in a tune. So that's how our brain is programmed. So it's very important that you sing to the child, and it has to be a two-way interaction. Singing to the child doesn't mean that you switch on nursery rhymes on YouTube or on the TV and just make the child sit in front of it. That's not how it's going to work. A parent has to be there with the child so that the joint attention between the parent and the caregiver develops. Okay. And the another important thing would be playing with the child. It's really, really very important to start playing with your children. And more important would be to follow the lead in your child's play. Follow what they are doing. Okay, follow what kind of toys they want to play with. Rather than asking them to play with you, you go and play with them. Play provides a lot of opportunities where you can talk to the child, talk about imaginary roles, where the child's creative thinking skills develop, and that's how the language also develops. It's not just here and now; it's beyond. The imagination is wide, so it will really help the child develop. And another important thing would be incorporate your child or involve the child in your daily routine. See, most of the times parents don't get time to sit with a child and do one-to-one activities. Even planning activities is very stressful. Like collecting materials and then doing activities. It's not always possible. So it's important that you involve the child in your daily routine. So as you go through your daily routine, you can expose to a lot of language to the children. For example, I tell parent that during a bath routine, what are the words that you can introduce to your child? What are the nouns you can introduce? What are the verbs that you can introduce? And how you can, play along in the routine and make it a fun way to learn language for the child. So it's important that routine has to be used.
Yeah, I think those are like quite encompassing things that you've spoken about, and I can definitely relate to it. And one of the things that I find myself sometimes struggling with is that just because of the whole thing, everything has to be done really quick, right? We're living this fast life. Like there's so many things we have to do, and
True.
sometimes rather than like stopping and actually talking about the process with the child, you end up doing it for the child, right? Whether it's feeding them or like for my little one, even like changing her diapers quickly or like, quickly doing things
Yeah,
around, but actually taking the time to pause and talk to them about, hey, what is
true.
happening right now, and so I think that's come out really beautifully. And even through reading, I know we're going to be discussing more. In fact, let's
Yeah,
just go to it right now since you've mentioned reading.
yeah.
How does reading and language development sort of go together?
So, what happens when you read to a child? You are exposing the child to a lot of new vocabulary, a lot of new concepts that come through the books, which you may not encounter in your daily routine. So, the things, the kind of words that you normally use in your daily routine is okay. Get up, brush your teeth, do susu potty. Let's finish our breakfast fast. So these are the things that we normally talk about in our routine. But when it comes to reading, a child gets introduced to a lot of new concepts. Like maybe the child, we are talking about animal habitats, or you're talking about continents, or you're talking about the types of food we eat, or the different types of children all around the world. And there is a lot of language that children get introduced to, which does not happen otherwise in our routine. So that is one of the very important reasons why we need to introduce books to children. Their vocabulary will improve tenfold. The second thing is early toddler books or baby books have a kind of repetitive nature. And this repetitive nature really helps children to learn words. how does a child learn to say the first word as bye or mama? Because we keep on telling to the child, say bye bye to auntie, say bye bye to uncle, say bye bye to your toys, or we constantly, keep on stimulating them to say mama. That's how those are the first words. So, the more repetitive nature of the words or of the vocabulary around, the more easy it is for the child to grasp it. So, that is what books really offer to children. Third important thing is that through books, children learn how they can combine various words that they know to form sentences or phrases or questions. Many of the time, children know the words, the vocabulary is there, but they don't know how to combine it or how to use it. So books provide an opportunity where children can, use these words. Even a toddler or even a baby who is non-verbal will point to the picture and look at you to ask, what is this? So that's how early the communication develops, and that's how the communication moves beyond the here and now or beyond the basic needs. The children have an inquisitive nature to ask for things, and that is how what books provide the child to learn. Then apart from this, it really helps children understand the various emotions, understand emotions with respect to people, and how to express them, how to label them. So that is an important thing that children will learn: the social interaction, vocabulary, concepts, broad area of things that children really learn from books.
Yeah, I think I really like that idea that you're bringing about, where we're really broadening their scope of things, right? Broadening more than what they actually
Yes,
encounter in everyday life.
true.
And sometimes it can also be a tool where we actually prepare them for something, right? That is supposed to come, but they've not yet experienced it. And then so they are
Yes.
better prepared in those environments. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing. Another
And
thing that you mentioned, yeah.
definitely, I would like to add attention, like, sitting at a place, and or even when the child is moving around, but he is listening to what you're saying. So the attention and concentration that is required for language, the child needs to listen to the words before they learn to speak. That is what really helps the child prepare the listening stage. That is the first stage which comes prior to speaking. So it helps them prepare for that stage for learning.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a very crucial one. And I think like
Yeah.
when we've worked together with that, right? Like I'm working on the
Yes.
attention skills and then like you're working on
Yes.
actually helping them develop speech. Um, so another thing that you spoke about is music, right? And you spoke about like actual interaction with your child in music and speaking it out. And even nursery rhymes have this repetition in them, right? That
Yes.
helps
Yes.
kids connect with.
Exactly.
So that's really cool. So next, I want to talk about how is gross motor or fine motor skills related to speech therapy? Is there any link, or like, what do you think about that?
So many a times, if you see, gross motor and fine motor activities are used in therapy. So the goal is not to work on the gross motor or fine motor activities, but when we are working on the gross motor activities, the goal is to improve the child's attention by involving him in a motor activity and thus stimulating language. Similarly, works for the fine motor part to use the child's interest for fine motor skills, like how you have in play, like building blocks or joining the links, but stimulating language through it. So stimulating language for children mainly happens through play, and play involves these fine motor and gross motor skills. That is one way how you can link the motor development and the speech development. But if you see, with regards to having a one-to-one relation between them, uh, it's not that if a child does not develop motorly, then he will not develop language wise as well. There is nothing like that. Even a child who is having difficulty with motor milestones, difficulty with walking, like children with cerebral palsy, who are having difficulty with movement, but they're having really good cognitive skills, they will still learn language. Okay, there will be a restriction in the amount of language that they learn because they are not getting so much of exposure. Like for a caregiver to every time take the child on a wheelchair or on a pram and take them outside in the environment is not possible. So the children don't really learn so much of vocabulary. Their vocabulary may be limited to their surroundings. This is a way in which the motor development will affect the speech development in a negative way. Because of the lack of motor movements, the child is not getting much opportunities to talk and interact with others, and even not getting enough exposure. Also, one more important thing will be their motor delay and speech delay can be concomitantly present in children. Like a child having a motor delay initially may have a speech delay as well. How we see in children with global developmental delays, where everything is delayed. So, using that delay as a high risk factor for speech delay, so that we can provide early intervention services to children, can be done. So this is how we can link them, see the effects, and accordingly work with the children.
Hmm. Yeah, and there was this research article also that I was mentioning, and in accordance to what you said, right? Like just different skills, gross motor or fine motor skills, actually creates a lot of opportunities for kids to explore, for kids to engage, and actually be able to then develop language and develop speech in that sense, right? So there was this article that I was reading where he spoke about how just different things, right? Like when a baby just starts to put things in the mouth and just that whole mouth closure, and with the baby trying to sort of do that movement, it actually stimulates that kind of noise that's coming out. Or when a child waves out, like bye bye. But those rhythmic movements also help them have rhythmic movements with their vocal cords, which is with the whole speech aspect, right? And I'm also thinking about, where we have baby sign language uh, that they start on way
True.
earlier on, right? Which actually
Yes.
then stimulates because of those rhythmic movements, just those different actions which actually stimulate speech and language development.
Development.
So,
Definitely. And also, if a child is able to do the motor movements or age appropriate in terms of motor movements, they get a lot of opportunities at play to experiment, to learn cause and effect, which won't
hmm,
happen when a child is not having the motor skills. So when a child is
hmm,
experiencing these things, when a child is experimenting with these things, we have an opportunity to stimulate language to the child during that particular moment, which may become restricted when the motor movements are not there.
hmm. Yeah, I think that's really crucial. Thanks for uh, plugging that in. Um, So when is it that a parent should approach a speech therapist? Because like we talked about, right? Like there are really early talkers, there are late talkers. So there's such a variety, right? But when should a parent actually be cautious that hey, I need help in this area and I need to visit a speech therapist?
I think ideally by 2 years of age, a child should be speaking a minimum of 50 words, okay, and should be showing signs of combining words into phrases like mama come, mama give, let's go. So these are the phrases that should come up. And if the child is not doing so, the child is not having enough expressive vocabulary, maybe the child is understanding everything but has not yet started speaking, then the parent should really visit a speech therapist. Also, when there is a delay in social interaction, like by 1.5 years of age, if your child is not giving eye contact or not, started imitating actions, not paying joint attention to people, then you should really consider visiting a speech therapist. When the child is not taking interest in people or objects around, and he is in his own world. So these are the signs that we see in children with autism spectrum even as early as 1.5 years of age. So when you see these signs, then you should really definitely consult a speech therapist. Also, a very important point that I would like to add here is consulting a speech therapist doesn't mean that you're going to start therapy. Consulting doesn't always equal to intervention. Most of the times parents just need few guidance tips from the side of the therapist on how to communicate with the child, or how they can provide a more stimulating environment to the children, a more counseling or guidance kind of session, and then they can proceed further. They need not come regularly for therapy. It will be a guidance based program for them. So parents, for the fear of starting therapy, they don't even consult. So that's not what should happen. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Um, Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Bisma, because I think a lot of parents have those sort of inhibitions, right? Like, oh, my child will need therapy and all. But more often, they actually just need to be guided, or just there are some extra
True.
tools or techniques, or just like these strategies that can be used that can actually facilitate better development. So thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
Um, Next, let's go on to busting a myth. Yeah. So, like we
Yeah.
said, right, there's spectrum of talkers and speech developers and language developers. But let's see. Okay, so usually we hear phrases or just like statements made that girls develop faster than boys, or girls do this much faster than boys, and more so when it comes to speech as well, right? So, would you tell us whether that's true or not true, and why?
So it's not completely true that boys speak later than girls. They speak late. It might be that they speak later than girls, but they are still within the normal range. Okay, like if you consider the age of acquisition for the first word to be from the first birthday till up to 1.4 or 1.5 years of age. So maybe a girl will start saying her first word during her first birthday, and a boy will say at 1.3 or 1.4 years of age. So they are still within the normal range. The delay is not significant that we call it like a delayed speech development or a delayed language development. So even though they are, uh, there is a difference, but they are still within the normal range. That is the point that should be considered. Otherwise, parents delay treatment saying that नहीं लड़का है देर से बोलेगा तो 2 साल तक 3 साल तक ऐसे ही नहीं आते हैं, and then that really affects the therapy outcome as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's important to actually see the just a spectrum of where your child lies, right? And in fact, it's so funny because a lot of my friends who have boys, like they've actually spoken much faster than the girls would, and I've been like quite surprised to even see that development. So yeah, it's quite a mix. It's not that
Yeah.
always true that boys do speak late,
Yeah.
but even if they do, they need to fall into the normal spectrum of
Normal
when
range.
it is supposed
Yes.
to. Yeah, normal range. Cool. So, Bisma, would you like to share with us a story? Um,
A story, a funny story. Would you like to hear?
yes, please.
So basically, what happened was I was working with a child with hearing impairment, and he was using cochlear implants. Okay, so we were working on building sentences for him. So there is this tool called Colorful Semantics that I use for children while building sentences, which has various pictures of various nouns. So we had taken pictures of family members as well as my picture was there. Then there were some action verbs, picture of action verbs, and then adjectives. So this is how the continuum was there. So that the child had to select the pictures and make a sentence. So he selected my picture, and then he selected a picture of the word hot, and he said Bisma Didi is hot. And we bursted laughing. Me and his mother, we were like continuously laughing. So even though his sentence might be meaningful, but it was not appropriate. Not appropriate for a 3-year-old.
Oh man. Oh, that is funny. Yeah.
So
And kids
yeah.
can be so
So
innocent in the way they even like come up with
yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, I think thank you for sharing that. Um,
Most
so,
welcome.
what would be your closing thoughts and just comments, or just encouragement to parents, even as we're on this journey of
So,
helping our
the
children?
most important thing that I would like to tell to parents is nowadays, we don't see this as a habit, that is reading. So, start reading to your child right from the very early stages, right from the stage when they are baby. Because, nowadays, if you see, there are a lot of books available. So, there are these black and white, high contrast books available for newborns to concentrate, to build their concentration, and from then on they go to single picture books. There are cloth books, board books, then paperbacks. So there is a lot of books available. You need not always buy new books. You can buy second hand books, you can lend from the library, but make sure reading is developed as a hobby, because it will not only help in a child's language skills, but also in improving a child's general knowledge, the thoughts about the environment, a child's thinking, how a child's thoughts are. So a lot of things can really be learned through this simple exercise reading. You don't do any activities for your child, it doesn't matter. But inculcate this habit of reading right from early childhood.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I think that's a big point. And I know that on your Instagram page, you're always promoting reading, right? You're always
Yes.
finding books for your son, or you're like trying to
Yeah.
figure out what will work. So, yeah, thank you so much, Bisma, for chatting with me today and just enlightening us in so many areas of speech and language development.